It was a block party in Brooklyn. You're Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a higher stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, Donovan Clingan hosted a block party in Brooklyn, and Northwestern was cordially invited. Kong finished with the stat line: 14 points, 14 rebounds, 8 blocks. Almost a rare 10-block triple-double, although if you ask Bill Raftery, he was giving them 2 more unofficially. So the Raftery triple-double for Donovan. Look, we did an entire show last week with Michael Cohen on how UConn built a juggernaut on offense. But to me, they're going to be times when your shots aren't falling, and your anchor has to be your defense. It starts with great on-ball pressure, and we got that with Steph, with Tristen, with Cam, and with Haas. They cut the lead. They cut the head off the dragon in Boo Buie, who coming into the second round game was their playmaker. He was averaging 19 points per game. He was held to 2 for 15 from the field and 0 for 3 from three-point land. He ended up with 9 points, but if it wasn't for some late fouls in the stat line, would have been, a lot worse. On Sunday, on the live show we talked about the three-headed monster of Buie, Barnhizer, and Langborn. I still prefer the names Buie, Kornheiser, and Langmore. Those are the names that stick in my head. I think the extra attention to Boo helped Langborn get going, and he had a nice night. He had 13 points. Barnhizer as well led them in scoring with 18, but stopping Buie was the key. And I felt like from the jump, we physically overwhelmed them. If they did break away from the clamps, they had Steph in the guards, that were taking the lead on. They had Donovan to deal with his 8 blocks. Depending on who you ask, the beauty of having Clingan at full strength, it also allows the defense to play even more suffocating defense and not foul. I think, we get all up in arms as fans with the Big East officials that we don't get a great whistle, and I think that's 100% true. But in the NCAA tournament, it's been different. We really haven't been tested yet, so that could change. But in those 2 games, we really haven't made a lot of silly fouls, and I think part of that is because you have a healthy Donovan Clingan, because these guys don't feel like they have to use their hands. They can body up. They can feel like if they do make a mistake, the big man's there to erase them. So the game starts 18-4. At the 12-minute mark, we have 0 3-pointers hit. But it might as well have been 30-4. They were putting on an offensive clinic, running their sets, hunting for threes, even though they weren't taking as many, and also weren't making it. But they were taking what was given. Slip screens, backdoor cuts to the basket. It was in as efficient a start as I've seen, much like the Stetson game. The team is locked in offensively. The first 3 came at the 3.5-minute mark. And what was beautiful about this is it essentially crystallizes who UConn is. Cam Spencer at the top of the key hits a 3. And I bring that up because the start of a 6-0 burst near the end of the half. If you know where I'm going with this, UConn fans, it's literally because it was one of the most beautiful plays of the entire half. And it starts with a Barnhizer missed 3-pointer. Donovan gets a rebound where he's kind of coming across his body. He gets a quick outlet to Tristen Newton, who pitches ahead to Diarra. 3 passes. Hassan Diarra makes a layup with an and 1. No dribbles. If you've ever played basketball and you ever played organized basketball, we're in practice for those outlet drills with no defense. This is what it's supposed to look like. So every coach that's ever coached college basketball or basketball in general was watching that going, man, that's exactly how we do that drill. That's exactly why we do that drill. And it was just unreal. We're up 22 at the half, and we've missed 5 open threes. Just let that sink in. We made 2 for the game think we're 2 for 13. But no, shot 3 for 22, pardon me. 2 for the half. But we missed 5 open shots and we were up 40 to 18 at the half. It likely could have been 55 to 13, 55 to 18. So now that's if they made all those, chances are you're going to make almost 3 out of every 5 of those open ones with the way this offense is constructed. So we weren't hitting our shots last night. It's okay. The second half, I'll have to say, going back and looking again, this was a mixture of, sorry, I'm yawning. Late night last night. This was a mixture of not running their stuff at times, not the entire time, and Northwestern played better. They showed some pride. They made a few shots, especially Langborn and Barnheiser. So my initial thought of maybe a C+ game, I'll take that up to a B-, and only because they didn't shoot well. And that's on the I'm calling it the Danny Hurley standard scale. For me, that game last night was uneventful. I didn't feel any pressure, didn't feel any of that fan angst. Maybe at the end when they were starting to make a little bit of a run, but that was more frustration. I picked them to win by 17 points on the live show, and they ended up winning by 16, or I think 18. So I was close. But anyway, I digress. So we're close to being as a total offensive juggernaut in last game as we can possibly be. The only missing piece was that 3-pointer. We shooting only 13%. That's not going to cut it. So again, that's where I would say B- on the game overall. And luckily we shot 53.7% overall. So I didn't do the breakdown of what that was like if you took the 3-point shot away. I wonder what that would look like. And I apologize for yawning again. Matt Norlander slipped this in at the end of the game when he interviewed Dan Hurley. I saw it on Twitter. To Hurley, he said, "You're the early tip Thursday in Boston." And Hurley responded, It gives me and us more against the world mentality that I can utilize. Because I do think the committee has tried to make this as difficult as they can on us to do it. Florida Atlantic, Northwestern as an 8-9. Obviously the Auburn, San Diego State, Illinois, Iowa State, and what they look like. We know what they had in mind. And it's more fuel on the fire. So we have a fired up Danny for the Sweet 16. We'll talk stars of the first and second round and a look ahead to our matchup in a rematch of last year's title game with San Diego State coming up. This week's March Madness Bracket Highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. The NC State Wolfpack are obviously this week's Nissan Rogue. The team absolutely surprised us all with a powerful performance in their first 2 games in the tournament. Wins over Texas Tech and Oakland have them set up to play Marquette in the Sweet 16. They say, win life, go Rogue. And that's exactly what the Wolfpack have done here. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 in use on spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet college hoops until they cut down the nets. All right. So let's do a quick follow-up on what from our Dan Hurley quote. Dan Hurley is doing this for his team. His outrage, in quotations, or displeasure with the tourney committee is a clever facade that the media eats up. And people who hate UConn use it as fuel for their anger. Just looking at Matt Norlander's mentions after he put this out, I'll read a couple that I can read. They're pretty funny. Bro is playing victim for no reason. Okay. Help me understand. How does an early tip at an arena an hour from your campus make it a disadvantage for UConn? Also, since when does the committee decide game times? Does he understand that the team his guys are playing are still playing currently, have a 2+ hour flight home, then are flying across the country on Tuesday, and finally, someone who gets it? Doing his job, would also be upset at a late tip or a different tip on any day. He's building that chip. Look, to put a bow on this, Dan Hurley is a disruptor, and he wants his team to feel that us against the world mentality. I've done multiple shows this month. How do we stay motivated? How does Dan Hurley keep them eye on the prize with all the press, with all the people saying that they're going to win it all? Well, this is how. This is where this is comfort, where there is comfort, you make it uncomfortable. Can always tell when someone in my mentions or other forms of social media has never worked out or played a sport at a high level or coached at any level, even in sports or at work, when they say ridiculous things like this. This is how winning is done. You can quibble with how Danny does it in the media, but that's him. He is true to his roots. He is, South Jersey, Philly. You can take any coach who is perceived as classy or humble, and they're all saying all these things in closed door. So they may come out in the media and say, "Well, we're just going to do our best, and everything's going to be fine." And that may be fine for that coach, but that's not who Danny is. And I think he's staying true to himself. He always stays classy with, in particular, with teams and programs he respects, and I love it. Learn to love being hated, UConn fans, because this feeling will continue. He's created a standard that's not letting go. Well, moving on. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Well, our stars of the first and second round, this team, I got a text last night again, Mikey Casey getting his 100th shout out on the show. I think he said, let me look at it, something to the effect of, I'm running out of superlatives or adjectives. Don't know what to say anymore. Just hope we don't have an off game. Nobody's beating us if we play like this. And that can be said for both games of the weekend. So to Mike's point, I thought we were a little off tonight. That's what's scary about this team. I don't think they've had a full Marquette game or Xavier game in the tourney, and I feel like that's coming. And it may not happen against San Diego State, and we'll talk about them in the third segment. But this team, let's just run down the starters and just kind of go over and give them their flowers of what they did over the weekend. What else can we say about Tristen Newton? He should have been Player of the Year in the Big East. I don't think that's debatable. All due respect to Devin Carter. He's going to be a great pro someday, but you were on the 6th or 7th ranked Big East team. Your numbers weren't astronomical. I just never saw it. I mean, the fact that Tristen Newton is a first-team All-American and didn't win his conference's game, the coaches should be ashamed. That's been rehashed and talked about over and over again. Let's look at what Tristen did in these first two games. 13 points and 20 points respectively, but the consistency factor that I love about Tristen is he's still continuing to get his team involved. 8 assists in the first game, 10 assists in the second game. Grant Hill said last night in the broadcast, he's the leading scorer. It's so quiet. That's the thing. Tristen doesn't have a lot of aha plays or wow plays, although a couple of his layups last night, going to the hoop and getting fouled, were pretty incredible. I have to say, some of that I just jumped out of my chair and was just like, what was that? It was amazing. But yeah, I mean, averaging 9 assists for those 2 games. Really, shows his leadership. And I think, that was the evaluation that the NBA gave him, was they needed to see better leadership from him. And I think that's what he's doing, and that's what he's been doing throughout the entire season. And it showed in Brooklyn. And we'll go to the stay in the backcourt. Cam Spencer, 15, 5, and 3 versus Stetson. I feel like he played a better game against them, but I thought he was like a B. Let's go back to Tristen. I would give Tristen an A for the weekend. I think he was more. I would give him an A for the game against Northwestern and a B plus versus Stetson. But I think the Stetson game was out of hand quickly, so really couldn't kind of build off of it. Cam, same thing. I think he had an A versus Stetson. I think it was a B versus Northwestern. He was 15, 5, and 3, and then 11, 4, and 4 against Northwestern. I thought he did fine. I thought he hit hit it 1-3, missed some open shots, or else he probably would have had a lot more points. But Cam doesn't hunt a lot of his own shots. He plays within the system. If he's open on his hot spots, he shoots. If he doesn't, he looks to kind of get other people involved. So again, I'm grading on the Hurley scale. Let's go to our 5-star freshman, Steph Castle. First game, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. A game. I'm also giving him an A for the second game. I don't care if he scored 0 points. He had 7. His job, and we talked about this, I think Little Red said this on Sunday. I don't care what he does. His job on Sunday was his mission was the defense, and it was to stop Boo Buie, and he did that, amongst others. But that was his focal point. Any extra points he gave was going to be gravy. Again, just so physical, so dominant. He missed a couple of open shots. So did everybody. So he was in good company there. But his defense, I give him a solid A for the weekend. Was fantastic. And I'm not grading him on a freshman scale. I think at this point he's a sophomore. He has gotten to the point where you don't consider these guys freshmen anymore. We'll go to Caravan. Another lunch pail weekend, 12-4 against Stetson, 9-5. I'll give him a solid B for both games on the Hurley scale. On a night nobody shot well, he made some great cuts, got some big layups on backdoors and dunks, key rebounds, just the ultimate glue guy. I want to do an entire show on Alex Caravan at the end of the year, an appreciation, and I'm going to bring in guests. Hopefully, I can get in some coaches who have had to go against him. And I really just want to show him as much love as possible. Kid is just indispensable. And then Donovan, dominated. So first game had 19. The crazy stat about the weekend is if I said Donovan Clingan averaged 4 blocks a game over the weekend, he had 8 blocks in one. He had 0 against Stetson. I went back and looked, and I was just like, really? 19 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists against Stetson, 14, 14, and 8 against Northwestern. The kid he's special. And he is the type of player that doesn't come around a lot. I mean, obviously 7'3" guys don't grow on trees, but his footwork, his ability to run the floor. I know Raph and Grand Hill talked about it last night. I mean, there was one play where he got ahead of the defense. They knocked it away, but he was a solid 3 or 4 steps ahead of the defense, and they caught up. But I mean, that's what he gives. He gives total effort. He has, is always being unselfish. He probably would have had 4 or 5 assists last night if we made some open threes. So his ability to fill up the stat sheet is kind of unmatched at this point. I think the only other person that does it on the team is Tristen. Our bench wasn't spectacular, but they didn't need them to be. I think they gave some good minutes. I think Samson is doing a great job bringing the UConn energy. Had a 2-2 the first game, and 6 points in a big block last game. Still not getting a ton of rebounds, but also for whatever reason, when he's in the game, not saying that they miss less, but he's also giving Donovan a chance to rest. He's not our starter. And the people that want him to give you 6 to 10 rebounds a game, he doesn't play enough to get that many rebounds, first off. Second off, he's hedging out on screens a lot, so he's away from the basket. So a lot of times he's in that scramble mode, doesn't get to kind of anchor himself down. If he was playing more, drop coverage on pick and roll, he would have a lot more rebounds. So I think some of that is, just understanding what he's being asked to do. Hassan Diarra, another solid game, 4 points, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. First game against Northwestern, he had 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and that spectacular 3-point play. He missed a couple open shots. Again, so did everybody. And then Jay Stu had 5 points, 4 rebounds the first game. Second game, he only played a little bit. He didn't score, really didn't fill up the stat sheet. Again, Jay Stu last night was not needed to pick them up. He will. I feel like he will at some point in this tournament. So give this kid some time. He is going to be fantastic and phenomenal, and just absolutely show what you can when you get your opportunity, kid, because stay ready. I just have a feeling he's going to have another Big East tournament final moment where, he's going to have to fill in for Alex or someone else, and he's going to steal the show. So fantastic job from our 8 guys who are playing. Love to see the reserves get in there. I know Dan was not happy with Andre Johnson hitting that 3 to end the game. I personally don't care, but I also would not want to piss off Dan Hurley as a walk-on. Good thing it's towards the end of the year, and I don't think practices are going to be as tough as they would have been earlier in the year if you did something like that. But we'll preview San Diego State just a little bit. It's a tiny preview coming up. Finding the perfect fit for your small business is crucial, and LinkedIn Jobs makes this not just possible, but simple and quick. From my personal hiring adventures, I've learned the value of a pool of quality candidates. It's a game changer. LinkedIn Jobs stands out because it's not your ordinary job board. With access to over 1 billion professionals, it connects you with talent you won't find elsewhere. It streamlines your hiring process and gives you fast results. The vast network means 86% of small businesses land a qualified candidate in just 24 hours. Using LinkedIn Jobs, I've seen firsthand how easy it is to match the professionals who really fit the bill. Trust me, it transforms hiring from a chore into an opportunity. Okay. Yes. San Diego State. We meet again. First off, it's a 7:39 tip at TD Bank Garden in Boston. UConn opens as a 9.5-point favorite. Seems about right. I'm sure that line will move up or down here in the next couple days. You'll see some familiar faces, Jaden Lee and Darian Trammell of last year's squad. And we're going to do a really in-depth dive on San Diego State on Wednesday. But for what always stands out to me is toughness. They only give up 66.3 points per game. That's always been their staple. Now, sometimes they can't hit water if they fall out of a boat on offense, but they look pretty good against Yale. Where UConn really could have an advantage is this is not a good three-point shooting team. They've shot it at 31% for the year, and they shoot about 7 threes a game. So regardless of how hot they get, there won't be a volume of shooting. This is essentially the opposite of, say, Creighton. They out-rebound their opponents by 5. I think Donovan is going to kind of shrink that gap a little bit and bother their offensive rebounding prowess. But again, what sets them apart just on the stat sheet is where UConn has to be tough again is ball handling. They have to be secure with the ball. San Diego State creates 15 points off turnovers a game. If we can limit that to, say, in half, I think UConn will win comfortably. But San Diego State will have other plans. I also think there's this mentality that we do in the media where there's a matchup that's a preview of or a matchup of a rematch of last year's national championship. The majority of the players that are playing in the game on both sides aren't here anymore. The major players of that game. Now, I mean, just think about it from UConn's perspective. You have our three who are members of the team. I know Haas played, but you have Tristen, Donovan, and Alex Caravan. If I'm missing anybody, feel free to, hit me in the chat or hit me up on social media. But we had Hassan Diarra. Obviously, Andrew Hurley was on the team. We have others, but in Sampson, but they didn't play a major role in the game. Donovan did, Alex did, and Tristen did. But and the same goes for San Diego State. And again, we'll get into more of a deep dive on Wednesday. But I just think, again, it's kind of like what the JMU coach said about Duke. We're not playing Grant Hill. We're not playing Bobby Hurley. We're not playing Christian Leitner. We're playing this Duke team. They got their ass kicked, but they played this Duke team. And the same goes for this game in particular. What happened in last year's tournament has nothing to do with this year's tournament. And I think that's also the mindset of Dan Hurley. I said at the outset, the bracket was tough. Good. Have you caught on yet to the theme of what Dan Hurley has built here at UConn? We don't want any easy games. No easy games on paper. No 13 seeds, no 11 seeds. We want the best. And then we'll go outclass them on the basketball court. I really think that we have to do a really good job right now of managing what's coming next. And what I mean by that is all levels of UConn, from Dan to Luke to Kamani to the entire team of, okay, so one hurdle is leaped. Now we get to Boston. They're going to play up the whole, we're starting early. We don't have a ton of time to prepare. And I really do feel like all of the folks that are upset about how, well, San Diego State is in Spokane, Washington. They got to fly back Tuesday or fly back to their campus and then fly halfway across or all the way across the country to play a 7:45 game, which on their meter is more like a 4:00 game for Western time zone. I get all that. But also, if you're looking at from UConn's perspective, UConn is the number 1 overall seed. They're supposed to get, quote unquote, the breaks because they earned it. They're 33-3. They played in the Big East Conference. They did not play in the Mountain West, which got 1 million bids and did nothing in this tournament. So the idea that we're supposed to now give concessions to San Diego State just because they're in the tournament as a 5, give me a break. That's what Dan Hurley's talking about. So there's some truth to what he's saying, even though it is 100% a ploy to build that chip. So our toughness meter as fans has to rise, because the further we get in this tourney, the hate is going to rise even higher. So let's thank people for their engagement on social media, even if they're being disrespectful, and watch our guys rise to the occasion as they meet their next challenge in Boston. Look, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV. The free Fire TV channels app, Locked On Sports Today, is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on free Fire TV channels app. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. As always, I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, wishing you peace, love, and go Huskies.